Yeah. Yo, Sanjay Uche here, people, giving you my review on Samurai Jack episode 7. Seriously, I'm pretty sure anyone who's been listening to these reviews of mine where Samurai Jack's concerned, on a consistent basis, are, probably tired of me saying that the episode is, at least a 9. I mean, it's just, I think it's, an advantage of shows that are written seasonally, like cartoons or anime, and especially all the hype and waiting and all that was behind the return of the series. That it was kind of impossible that the episodes wouldn't be consistently great. So, with that said, let's get into it. So this episode really surrounds Jack looking for his sword finally after 7 episodes, but I think the pacing and the waiting up to this point was perfect and it was worth the wait, and I think they pulled it off pretty well. So yeah, the whole synopsis of this episode is Jack goes on a, I guess, out of body experience, more like an astral plane like experience, to look for his sword, while I would assume they're minions of Aku. Yeah, but minions of Aku are whoever. This army is essentially on its way to. I'm not sure how they figured out where Jack was, but eh. So I guess that the assumption that they are minions of Aku to help with that. But yeah, so they come to essentially kill Jack, and Ashi's essentially has to be the one to defend Jack because Jack isn't really conscious, as I implied, because he's basically in an outer body experience looking for his sword. But yeah, so the episode really starts off with a flashback. Funny enough, at one point I was wondering, did I, am I watching the right episode? But yeah, we start off with a flashback where we see Jack going after the last time portal, and he finally finds it with the help of some weird looking, I guess, sheep. And he jumps in, but only to be stopped by Aku once more, and Aku destroys the portal, which really infuriates Jack. And it's funny to, well, how should I even put it? I think if you've been watching this season up to this point, you could probably pick up that I think it was at this point that Jack's whole psychological issues essentially started, because the way they portrayed him, as his anger at that point is kind of similar to how the old Jack, in terms of appearance from previous seasons, is portrayed in Jack's head. So that was interesting to note, and I think it was a pretty cool touch. But whatever. So we get to the point that Aku basically makes his exit. He transforms to sheep. Jack eventually kills them, and we actually find out. Well, we get to see how he actually lost his sword. Fell into a ditch. Stupid. But yeah, so we get back to present day where Jack and Ashi basically return to that location to try to look for the sword to no avail. And Jack eventually comes to the conclusion that he himself didn't lose the sword, but the sword decided to leave him, which is, I think, appropriate based on the background of the sword in terms of how it was created. So, yeah. So we get to the point that Jack begins his, I guess, his astral journey to figure out where the sword is, and the episode basically sets up this the way it's executed. We get a pretty decent contrast between what Jack is going through and Ashi, because Ashi has to be protecting Jack, and Jack is in this quiet place where he eventually bumps into this weird figure person there. And basically the creature asks him to make tea, which I found to be pretty similar to Dragon Ball Super, in the sense that when back in the Goku Black arc, where Zamasu would make tea for Gowasu, so that was interesting to note. So it's really through the act of making tea that the creature assesses Jack's mental state and if he's worthy, quote unquote. But while all of this is going on, Ashi, we get some cool but ridiculous action scenes of Ashi essentially going through the army that's basically here to kill Jack, and of course it's a bloodbath. Ashi's like, as we'd say, probably a demon girl, but she's. I think it's pretty cool to see that they remind the audience through this episode that Ashi, despite that she and her sister were defeated by Jack, that she's still a formidable force, and I love that. Um, so and they put an interesting twist later on, but we'll get to that. So eventually, Jack finishes making the tea, and we find out that he's basically his mental state, his entire state isn't balanced, really and truly, and that's really the reason why the sword has eluded him all these years. Of course, well, how should I the old Jack, if you've been watching consistently, basically flips out and yeah, tells the guy that how can he basically deny them the location of the sword, yada yada yada. And it's always interesting to see the two Jacks interact on stream, because I always feel that the portrayal of the old Jack is really the doubts, the anger, the frustration that Jack feels deep down inside, and it is true. And we get to the point where Jack basically overcomes all the, I guess, no, I wouldn't say hate, but the frustration and the anger, and basically grows even more as a character, returning back to his original state of mind in the previous seasons, but with all the development he's had this season so far. So he eventually gets overcomes his anger, and it's at this point that we're reintroduced to the, I believe there were three gods, Ra, I forgot the other two. It was a Hindu god and another one. Yeah, I think Odin, Ra, and yeah, I can't remember the Hindu one. But yeah, these gods in the Samurai Jack lore were responsible for fighting the entity that Aku was originally part of, and I believe if I'm not mistaken, they were essential in actually creating the sword itself. But they deem Jack worthy once more, since he's now in balance and has overcome his psychological demons. So it's pretty symbolic. We get like a symbolic representation of this by the fact that they basically restore Jack to his previous state with the sword. And before he returns from this, I guess, astral plane, we get a very. I was not expecting this, because after Ashi takes up the army, we are led to believe that some made up the hill, and when the individual we're not introduced to yet fires the arrow at Jack, Ashi comes and catches it, and we find out that it's actually her mom. And we get a nice conflict, a nice battle, short but spicy, between Ashi and her mother, and even this itself was representative of Ashi's growth. It was cool seeing her stand up to her mom and not giving a shit about what she, well, not, I wouldn't say not giving a shit, but it was just really solid writing, seeing Ashi after going through all the developments that she's been through these last three episodes, and basically standing up to her mom. She eventually does throw an arrow through her mom, and her mom falls off the cliff. We're left to assume that she's dead, but I feel that that might not be the case. But yeah, but after this, Jack and Ashi basically decide that okay, the next move is we need to, I guess, go after Aku. So, and that's basically the episode. As usual, I would say it's definitely a 9 out of 10. The contrast between the violent scenes with Ashi and the quiet scenes with Jack overcoming his psychological demons, Ashi's confrontation with her mom, all great plot points that are being resolved or developed as we move towards the end of the season. But let me know what you thought about the episode. If you like this review, share it out, subscribe, that helps. If you haven't checked it out yet, I checked out my Dragon Ball Super review this week, episode 88. It was a pretty decent episode. And as I said, rate, comment, share, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one, people.